get this thing going. We'll try to knock this one out and then try to do one. Try if we can get 43 knocked out here in 40 minutes, we'll be good. A super fun chapter here. And still, man, this is an area I think if I were a young person, I might even go into this because I think there's still quite a bit of this to be figured out. Okay. And so this chapter is looking at behavioral ecology. Okay. So let's define that and get started with. Let's see if we don't have a definition of that popping up. Okay. And of course we don't. But here's the chapter broken up to inheritance influences behavior, the environment influences behavior. So I do have a question that I will give an answer to in this lecture, which I will have in video for number 3. Excuse me, that's not it. Let me find it here. Number 1, the first one. So what is more important? Okay, let's just go ahead and address that. Come on here. So this is looking at how, to me, and I think, don't y'all think when we came out of the cave, or Adam and Eve, somewhere along that way, maybe Adam and Eve came out of the cave, for all we know. At some point, as we start evolving, our mind and thinking, at some point, I think this is one of those fundamental questions that mankind has asked, right? Is it more important the DNA that we get to determine who we are and how we act, our behavior, which is obviously the chapter talking about behavior, but just, I've been thinking about like what my potential is, or is it all learned environment? Or is it all about how we're brought up? And I think this is a pretty cool question, right? This chapter kind of addresses that, right? Now I want to go with an answer that she actually mentions in the book here, but I'm just going to, but it doesn't, it's in the book, but it talks about a study by identical twins. I think that's one of the better things I've ever read on that. So we're just going to go with, I'm going to give you what they say at their website, just a ballpark, and y'all can just regurgitate that back on stats, get all 10 points, okay? But if you make a good argument for something else, I'm probably going to give you the 5 points or 10 points anyway, because I'm not trying to get in a fight with it. But I just think this is a really cool idea. I think this would be a fun thing to look at, right? And I do think, but I would say this before I say that, before we get to it, I do think that I have not met these people in my 30 years of teaching as a teacher or a student who actually took what they got and used it for 100%. You know what I'm saying? To be the best you can be. So that's all I want y'all to do is be the best you can be. You know what I'm saying? And I tell you, I've only met probably 1 or 2 people that I don't think could made it C in any of my classes. If they really, now look, don't get me wrong, I'd have to work a whole lot harder than some of y'all to get a B in this class. You know what I'm saying? Or C. But we all have different levels of where we at, right, on scales of things. And I just think it's pretty cool. And I think y'all can, and I don't know what y'all think about it before we even look at the data. So I do value what y'all think about that. Because I have a good friend of mine that just retired, and we actually named an award after her. So we give an award every year for the best outstanding teacher at Centovia. It's Miss Sandy Grisham Award. And she was one of my favorite people. I ate lunch with her every Wednesday for 12 years. But she is a bleeding heart liberal that thinks everybody can be president. And that's actually mathematically impossible. Everybody cannot be president of the United States, right? So we ain't have like 50. It's not mathematically possible. Everybody may have the potential to be president of the United States, but everybody can't be. It's just a mathematical impossibility, right? So I'm more of a realist in the middle of that, right? But I do, as we look at this, I want y'all what y'all think about it. But I do think though that that's all I strive to do is be the best I can be for what I got, and I have not achieved that myself. I'm still striving for the perfect lecture that I never would have. I mean, that's just my nature, okay? But it's just kind of cool because I think it's kind of fun. So let's look at nature and see what they got out there and see what we can learn from what's out there. Okay, and one of the first things I think is really cool is you can see talk a little bit about honeybees here. They have a very complex social structure, right? Including nest building, offspring production, they communicate with each other. We're going to see they do a waggle dance where they tell everybody where food is at or where enemies are coming. So they have a communication among bees. First time anybody saw the waggle dance, I think I read, they thought they found a beer or something, drunk some beer, and they were drunk. They walk in a little figure 8, and they're staggering around, and it looked like they're falling down. But it's a figure 8 structure they do that tells the other bees that go out, find the sun, and go this many degree angle from the sun and fly. As long as she does, or it does the waggle dance, that's how long you got to fly to find the food or the enemy or whatever they tell them. Pretty fascinating. So there is a language in the bees we didn't know. Look at that. The queen bees secrete the pheromone to attract drones and inhibits the sexual development of the workers, so they can't have children. So they have worker class of these drones or males that are from unfertilized eggs, whose only function is to mate with the queen. By doing this, they carry on only the specific genes, right? And the bee colonies share a high degree of genetic kin to each other. So strong, almost cloning each other. Behavior ecology then is the principle that natural selection shapes behavior just as it does anatomy and physiology. So in other words, like if you, let's just think about that for a minute. We have been artificially selecting horses now for about 300 years, at least, right? For speed. Well, guess what? We have not had any faster horses for about 30 years. So in other words, what they can do in Kentucky Derby that run that lap in is not, that time has pretty much been stabilized for about 30, 40 years, except when it's real muddy or whatever and it's slower. And so we may have reached the pinnacle, of anatomy and physiology, not natural selection, but forceful selection to get traits in animals. And we do that in corn. And I think corn is a good example. The ear of corn that we like to eat actually come from some corn in South America, like the little salad bar corn. That little one like that side of the thing. And we bred it together. They've been forced breeding it. The Indians did. So we have maize. Okay. Which is, of course, we've been working on corn for a long time. So anyway, so this chapter is looking at how good genetics, natural selection, but via genetics affect behavior. And I think it's pretty fascinating, some of this, okay? All right, so behavior is any action that can be observed and described, okay? So nature then, inherited versus nurture. So that's the question today. What is more important, nature versus nurture? And I would propose a very fair answer here is what? What would be the most likely thing? Some of both, yeah, some of both. I don't think we could say that a baby born will play NBA, right? Because there's so many things that happen along the way, right? Even though you may have the genetic material to be a great basketball player, you may not choose not to play. You may want to play the flute or the band, right? Nothing wrong with that. Environment, is that a big deal? I got to say it here, but I just think about, okay, please don't want to get nobody mad at that. But anybody see the funeral of the Queen's husband, right, on Sunday? Actually, it was a little bit Sunday morning or whatever it was when I was getting dressed for church and saw that. How many of y'all be fun? Now look, I've actually watched the Crown. Anybody see the Crown TV show? That's actually quite entertaining, right? I have never cared about the royal family until my wife got me to watch some of that. In the first 2 seasons, that was just amazing. Well, I felt like I knew that guy. You know what I mean? I felt like I understood him a little bit, even though we know that's probably dramatization, some of it. But how's I been born in that family? Wouldn't that be nice to have been Princess Di's third child? That would have been a pretty good gig, right? I mean, they still have all the jewels and stuff. They got a lot of money, right? They get paid, just to, they have certain duties they have to do. Versus, let's say, being born in Tunica to some family on welfare that don't have anything and owe lots of money. I think it would be easier to be and I define a successful citizen as someone who gets a job, pays their bills, and don't end up in jail. Right? To me, that's all I want for us to do is go to school with y'all to be successful, get a job, have family, and take care of your family, and then and don't end up in, don't do something crazy, don't go to jail. Be a productive citizen. I think it's easier if I had inherited $1 million at birth. I'm just saying. I know I had some friends of mine, 2 friends of mine, they inherited like $6 million apiece when they turned 21. They had a different attitude in high school than I did. I'm just saying, so environment has an effect. Okay, so genes we know control development of the neural and the hormonal mechanisms and therefore they are going to influence behavior. Today, most evidence points to the conclusion that most behaviors have a genetic basis, but it's not all in the genes, right? It's got to be something, and I think it's pretty obvious it's some of both, okay? Okay, so here's some experiments to show that. We have seen fishers, lovebirds, and peach-faced lovebirds build nests and carry leaves in different ways. They actually, it's got a picture in the book here, they actually sometimes will pull nest material and stick it in their feathers. And then they'll go and build that nest with it, okay? The hybrid offspring between 2 species have difficulty carrying nest material because their feathers ain't good enough in their hind feathers to hold stuff in it falls out. So they end up start carrying it in their mouth. So they developed, and it had some pictures of that. Here we go. So they can carry stuff, and sometimes they stick it in the rump feathers. So there's genetics involved. So when you have bred them to somebody else, they had trouble doing it. Okay. And so the tucking the strips of nest material in the rump feathers before flying back to the nest was a problem. Okay. Another one here, another study in your book here about, and this is kind of wild, I won't go into all the details. Inland garter snakes, inland populations are aquatic and feed on frogs and fish, while coastal populations are terrestrial and they feed on slugs. And so they took some slug extract, ground it up in a blender, and we test to see how many times they stick it in front of these. Obviously, they stick it in front of the You might strike the coastal ones, and they would strike it hard, right? Because they could smell it. But if they put the slugs next to the inland ones that did not eat slugs, they would not strike it. Okay, and then they bred them together, and the intermediates had an intermediate striking of the slugs extract. Does that make sense? Kind of like if I had a piece of steak and I put it on a dog with a dog rabbit, right? And when I said we had a species of dogs that like steak, and you had a group that never saw steak, they wouldn't strike it. But when you bred them together, they had an intermediate striking, showing us what? That some of this behavior to eat slug is what? It's genetic, right? Now you can read it, there's a whole paragraph in your book, but that's kind of what it says, okay? Pretty cool. Now the one that I'm going to give the answer I want for the test is this next one here. There was a twin study, and this is actually a cool study. Y'all may want to go check this website out. But it's University of Chicago, back in about, I don't know, maybe back in the 60s, they started a study, and it's been going on now for like 40, 50 years, where they went to public records and found identical twins separated at birth and raised by different families. Is this not cool? So they've been studying this for several years, since at least the 70s. And they come up with it. They may have changed. I haven't been to their website in a while, but let's just go with this. But they come up with a number of somewhere around 50 to 60%, which is 50-50, right? But probably 60% is genetic and 40% is environment of who you're going to end up being. And everything about us has some genetics involved. So it's about 60-40, they think, genetics. And a lot, now look, now I'm just saying that, but that's a lot. That's not saying you cannot be something like that, play, be good at some sport or play an instrument, but it's saying that their genetic plays a big role in it. And so what they found, and you can read their little paragraph in here, but it's fascinating, because I watched the video about an hour showing it one time on PBS. But basically, they would find these identical twins, and many times they didn't know they had a twin. Could you imagine if you had a twin? Let's just say I got a twin that was raised by, let's say, since I was raised in the Bible Belt, let's say it was raised by somebody that atheist living in California or Washington State. And they found these people, 50-year-olds. I mean, I was born in 1964, and they brought them back. They measured their body, they weighed them, and they did like extensive measurements of all their body height and everything. And they found out, that they were like 60% was almost identical. You know what I'm saying? And they even did personality traits to where it looks like, listen to this, guys. They both married a woman that looked very similar to each other, who actually, in one extreme, had the same first name. I mean, crazy. I mean, like crazy, okay? In one study, this is extreme. Now, remember, the average was in between. But I saw a video where they would take 120 in to give a test, and the girls would start. Y'all see people like twirl their hair when they take a test? Yeah, that's just a personal habit, right? And the other twin would do the same thing. Like I scratch my head. I'll scratch my head when I'm taking a test or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, in one case, there were two guys, one raised in Chicago, other raised in California, raised by different types of religious families. Both grew up, became firefighters. Both had won an award for pulling somebody out of a fire. And they both like some weird off-the-wall Irish beer was their favorite drink. They were like, Bud's off flavor, blue, green label, whatever. I don't even do beer, but it's very like, I mean, I can't even think we like beer. If you know anything about beer, there are thousands of flavors. There are hundreds now of all these craft beer. But they had the same beer. They had a girl, they married a woman, same first name, and they had the same number of, this is all probably not necessarily genetic related, but they had like 2 sons and a daughter. And when they met, one of them was raised in a rich family, the other poor family. One of them flew to Chicago to meet the other one with some of his family. When they met in the terminal, they videoed it, and they both were wearing like those Leisure Suit Larry, like the bubble up the shirts with the big flowery shirts that people that are wearing that big wear to make them look thinner. And they both met, and they looked like they said they looked like they looked in a mirror. I'm like, wow. I mean, it's kind of scary how much genetics plays a role. And I tell y'all this, and y'all gonna experience this too. I hope all y'all end up having children. I hope that's something you want to do, but when you have children and you see some of your habits in your children, it really hits home. And it's like a break, because I was kind of hard-headed and I saw that in my daughter. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Or some of the weird little things we do. Like one of my daughters don't want to like to clean her room, and I was like that when I was young. They want to clean the room. But I just think that's what you can walk and look at that. But we'll just say 60-40% is probably genetics is maybe a little bit more important than environment on that. So it's what that study has shown. I think it's pretty wild. And I think that's a great test group, right? Because those are 2 genetically identical people raised by what? Totally different environments. Okay? Thoughts coming. Look, I've been running my mouth. But what do y'all think about this? I mean, what's your initial thought when we came in the room? I mean, most people think it's a little bit of both. I think that would be obvious, right? But I have, like I said, and I love Miss Grisham, and she taught me a lot. I don't always agree, but I learn from everybody. But she really believed, you know, that you could, you know, take a mule and win the Kentucky Derby. Mules don't run real fast. Okay. But I don't believe that's possible. But I do think, though, that most of us never reach our true potential, right, as whatever we choose in our profession to do. That's what I would aspire for us to do. Okay? Thoughts? Nobody want to come on, man. Look, we can talk. We can disagree. It's okay. Okay? What do you think, Catherine? What do you think about that?
Well, I looked it up.
You think it's more genetics or environment? What do you think is more important?
I always thought it was code because I don't know. We did like a thing in like 8th grade about the Outsiders book about like taking the what's it called? I don't know. It's like a golden leaf or something. I don't know.
I watched it. I tell you a movie that's kind of cool that y'all might like. And I used to show it to class. This kind of turned into this old movie now. But have you ever seen the movie Gattaca?
Yeah, I had to watch
Really?
it.
Yeah, because it's a good movie, but it's about the future where nobody is conceived by accident like we are. You know, I mean, like random, you know, but so when in the future, when a couple decide to get married, like Catherine and her husband would go to genomics and they would just pull her best DNA out of her and make it an egg and the best DNA out of her husband so they could have the best traits of each other. And you got to pick the traits, like picking a menu, like you want blue hair, whatever you got. You had to pick off like an iPad what you wanted. And in this movie, there's a guy that wants to be an astronaut, but he had a heart defect. So he couldn't be an astronaut. He had to be like a maintenance guy. And so he forged and he stole somebody's fingerprints and stuff. Anyway, he found a rich guy that had all the credentials that was in a car wreck, and he stole his identity. And he did some things for that guy that's kind of swamp off. And I do think we got to be very careful about judging people by Robin's fat, so therefore Robin's going to be lazy. That's not true. Okay, you know what I'm always true. You know what I'm saying? We got to be very careful about stereotyping anybody at anything, right? But I just think that was a good movie about genetics and how the future may be. And I hope we don't end up like that, right? I mean, basically, you know, reproduction is a decoration only. When it's time to make a baby, you have to go to genomics and they selected the traits from us. So I do think that that's still some work to be done. But thank you for sharing. But I do think it's very intriguing, fun stuff here. And I think it's one of the questions that we have asked for a long time. There's the gator. There's the tomflex. Kind of hard to read this one. Okay, I believe the one here was the one, yeah, the coastal ones that like slugs, right? And over here are the ones the inland. And then when we did the babies had an intermediate. Okay, they didn't drop there, but there was an intermediate clique amongst the inbreeding of the crossbreeding of those. Now other ones here, egg laying behavior and snails. They found a gene that they could a hormone and the gene, and they could spray that hormone on them, and the females would go lay eggs even though they haven't been fertilized. They hadn't had sex, you know, with another. The male of this, so the snails were just dead eggs, but they would go lay eggs. And we could do that even in the farm. We used to have a shop. We could give a cow and make it go and eat. Public LH or something, right? So she would do that. She would literally go find a male. Okay. Nurturing behavior in mice. Look at that. We found a gene that triggers the suckling of the baby, or to make the baby engage in nurturing behavior, so the mice wouldn't, you know, be mean to his babies. Okay, and there's some data showing that. Okay, if the gene's present, then they like the babies, and here they are, others not letting the babies near. Okay, so it does. There's definitely some behavior going on. Okay, now here's one that's still got a lot of debate in biology and behavior. Fixed action pattern. Now, these were really cool when they first come out, but now there's a big debate about some of that being learning. But here's an example of that. Has anybody got family members that like deliver the mail like a? They still, you know, postal people that go and put it in your box at your house. Well, they're trained. My uncle was a postal deliverer, so this may have changed. But at one time, they were trained to say, if you walk up someone's house and a big old Rottweiler or a big old dog comes running out, you're to stop and go, stop. But if you run, that was thought at one time to be a fixed action pattern. And so when an animal sees something running, what do? They attack it. Okay, just like, and I'm making a joke here, please don't ever, but I think spinner hubcaps must be cracked for dogs. But they love, I mean, my dogs love chasing cars, right? What's up with that? Why does the dog chase the car? So I think it's probably triggering some fixed action pattern where, you know, the predator runs, attacks. Okay? But I also know some male carriers got to attack that dog. If that dog didn't work, the stop didn't work, right? But the only option then would be to run. And y'all know when they have the bullfights in Italy, we won't get into the moral of that. What color is the cape? A lot of animals, that is a Stein stimulus that makes them attack. Okay? So wearing red, you know, around a bull, find out a good idea, right? And there's a great experiment now where one of the birds, the robin that has the red breast, you put two robin birds in a tree, they'll just tear each other up. And because they see that red, they attack it. And so they did an experiment where they put a red sock in a tree and it was shredded within a week by the robin bird. They just tore it up. Then they had a perfectly mounted robin male, but they made his chest not red, made the same color as the rest of his body, and they never touched it. So they wouldn't even bother a real, mounted bird in their nest. Like right next to their nest. Like, what's up, brother? It's all cool. But put that red, they tore it up, even like a sock in the tree. So we do know that they're there, and that is the red itself is the trigger mechanism. See, what's the name of it in the book? What's it called? The sign stimulus. But it actually, whatever it's triggered is a name for the red. What is it? Sorry, the book. I read this chapter yesterday. Anyway, but it has a name for that object that triggers them. And maybe so, but then a lot of people are arguing a lot of that's learned or something, right? So still a debate on that. So learning then is a durable change in behavior brought about by experience. Okay. And we know that too. The pecking behavior and these laughing gull chicks, the more they peck the beak, mother feeds them. Okay. So mother feeds them based on them picking on her, grabbing her beak. Looks like my little dog that I have trouble with. Obviously, he can't talk to me, but he'll get my lap and bring his toy and lay it in front of me, and then it grabs my hand. Not bite, because it can really bite. It can make me bleed, but it'll just gently put its hand on, its teeth on me and then pull me towards the what? The throw toy, which means throw my freaking toy, Robin. Throw my toy. Okay, so there's something to that. That's pretty cool to me. All right, imprinting. Now, this is one that's real famous. Lonzo, the gentleman, Lonzo, what's his name? Lonzo Ball, whatever, not Ball, it's Ball player. But imprinting is something crazy. Look, this is a pattern, a behavior that is triggered by some early experience. Okay, and he got famous, whatever his name is, Lonzo, whatever, got real famous for this one reward. He would take baby ducklings and roll them in an incubator so they never saw mother. And as soon as they got up to where they could walk, he would take a little whistle and go, and then he would march and they would follow him. So they are going to follow whoever makes this noise or whatever the first thing they see. And he took picture video of him walking through by his lake, and there's like 8 little ducklings following him. And real mother comes up and goes, quack, 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 translation, get y'all butt over here, I'm mama. And they just kept following him. So they imprinted with the human instead of the real mother. And then some follow-up studies on that was that when they got old enough to mate, they preferred, they actually, the humans sometimes, they would try, but they didn't like, in other words, maybe, theoretically, maybe we like somebody that reminds us of our parents. I don't know if it's true. You know what I'm saying? But there's some studies on that saying that we may be programmed by whoever raised us. We want something that was nurturing like that, like your mother was. And so you guys may be subconsciously looking for somebody that your mother may have that have your mother's characteristics, possibly. But fascinating stuff here. You can see the picture of the book that it should look at there. Yeah, Conrad Moran. And there's this little duckling. So there is imprinting. Now this has got a lot of people worried that like my mama, she stayed home with me, but we took our children to daycare. So are they imprinting with the daycare person? And it doesn't seem to be any major problems with that. But I'm just saying, but it does look like they're in the ducklings. There is a critical period, like a certain period of time in their development that they need to follow somebody, and they're imprinted into him, okay, instead of their mother, which is kind of crazy, kind of wild. So that is imprinting. We can back that up to find that again. Then is when a young animal forms association with the first moving object it sees, has survival value in the wild, leads to reproductive success in the lab. A sensitive period was defined where that interaction needs to occur. The gooselings following that. Social interaction between parents and offspring during sensitive periods are key to normal imprinting. The mallards clucking there, that's another example of that. But pretty cool in there. And they showed you some of these. Bird brain is especially sensitive to acoustical stimulation during sensitive periods. So the right songs have to be made for them. The white crowned sparrow have to sing the right song. And if you can't learn that song from your mom and dad, you don't get a husband or wife. Okay, you got to learn the right song. So that's one of the behaviors that you have to do. Now here's one that we're all probably more used to: association learning. Any change in behavior that involves an association between two events. Okay, now there's 2 examples of that. Classical association conditioning: the paired presentation of 2 different types of stimuli cause an animal to form an association between them. And he did this one, Pablo, another great early behavioral ecologist, would ring a bell and feed the dogs. And then you can ring the bell and the dogs start making saliva and they come, you know, they're ready to eat. They start actually making the hormones. I've seen this on the farm too, where we feed we have a lake on our farm. Does anybody feed catfish on their farm or on their granddad's house? Well, try that. You can ring a bell before you throw the feed out. And then after about a week or two, you can ring the bell and the fish all come to the top. The water starts pouring over looking for food. So they associate what? Hearing that sound, or for them, feeling that vibration, right? I'm not sure they have ear. Okay, they have the ability to feel vibrations with food. Okay, so how many of y'all were paid for A's in high school or junior high? Anybody get paid for grades? Did it work? Did you think it helped you study more? Okay, I mean that would be an association learning, right? I get A's. I'm thinking $5. I'd be like whatever, right? But for me, when I was $1,600, $1,700 for an A, that'd be pretty serious stuff, right? I have heard people give $1,000 for A's. That gets serious. I'm talking about that makes a difference between me going out on Thursday night and partying and studying for my finals, right? Studying college or something, right? Now my wife, and this is personal stuff for y'all, but she worked 30 years in Mississippi, 28 years in Mississippi teaching kindergarten, and put up with me, but she should get like extra pay for that. And then she retired about 3 years ago, and she's in her 3rd year teaching in Mississippi schools at Oakshire. It's the first school this side, you know, once you get into Tennessee. Matter of fact, that bridge, when you cross into Tennessee, that bridge is actually right next to the playground. You can actually see, if you look real hard, you can see the boundaries of their property. Very, very poor, underprivileged, it's almost sad. To have so many people leave. It's a very migrant community. It's a very poor community. It's the poorest community in the Mississippi school system. But she really loves working with these kids. She really, really does. But their principal has done something that nobody else in Mississippi school done, and now they're actually modeling his school. He went to all of those stores around, and he had a lot of friends in other schools. I really like him. He's a good principal. He got all these donations, and he calls them they're the Mighty Dolphins. They call them Dolphin Dollars. So when the kid don't miss school all year, they get like $1,000. Or if they make all A's, or if there's some extracurricular and they do it, and they get these Dolphin Dollars, and at the end of the year they go in the Dolphin Bank. He's even got like a like PlayStation 3 out. He got PlayStation 3. Somebody donated with all these games. It's like $10,000 Dolphin Dollars. And they were telling these kids, like all these cousins, they throw all their money together, they might not have enough. Because a couple of these kids have got several $1,000s, and I think it's like $10,000 for that. But they have seen their attendance go through the roof. They've seen grades go up because they're paying these kids to come to school. That sounds kind of awful, but I think it works, right? I think it's a good idea. Anything we can do to inspire and make somebody come to school. And of course, if she gets some evil ones, like last year, a kid took much of that. Y'all see, and I don't even see this. My kids are grown. Y'all seen that you can buy like what is it? I call it like what is that called? Like Jello, but it's like Play-Doh, but it's like the stuff like they used to throw in like green box, it's like goo or whatever. You can buy it in a box. And that kid took it home, slime, something like that. You can buy a big box of slime. This kid bought 5 gallons of slime and took it home. It was like a barrel of slime, and the parents about killed somebody. He's like, what did you do? I sent it at home. But he wanted slime. He could buy a gallon of slime. My little nephew had it when it was spring break. I got out and played with it in the kitchen outdoors. It was a lot of fun. But you can make a mess. But that's what we do. So maybe that's not a bad idea. But that's a classical condition for you. 2 different types of stimulation. But that's actually the next one. Actually, that one is ringing the bell food. That was actually operant conditioning, a gradually strengthening of stimulus response. So that's how you do tricks with animals, right? Like our dog is doing better now that if it goes outside and uses the bathroom on the grass, we give it a treat. If it does it in the house, we put them in their pen. They can't get to run around the house. So that would be kind of like paying you for grades or something. And so that is that's a type of conditioning, right? When y'all know we've done that. That's how they do the tricks. If you ever seen the killer whales and all that, they're feeding them, right? Skinner did rats pressing a lever and were rewarded with sugar pellets. Okay, and so that one is they learn how to do that, right? Behavior, and that's how we get out of that now. And then now just kind of shifting gears to migratory animals. They have ability to originate where they're at, know which way to go, and how they migrate stuff. They're obviously doing some navigation. Here's a cool one here. This is the breeding range of this typical migratory route of the starlings. And so they tried something crazy. They grabbed a couple of these starlings and they put them and threw them in Switzerland. And the older ones that had made the trip before found their way back to England. Okay. But the ones that were babies, they flew the same amount of distance at the same angle to Spain. That's pretty cool, right? So basically they know to go so far a certain direction, right? But since they hadn't made that other trip, they didn't know to compensate that they were able to realize they were south of where they need to be and then to go up. My daughter was a biology major and she wanted to get a master's degree in something in science. And so one summer she actually tagged butterflies. And that is not a high demand. There are not jobs posted for tagging butterflies. Okay. So you got to be really top of the class to get these jobs that pay minimum wage. I'm telling you. She was lucky one summer. She got a summer internship working at a summer summer gig with the Corps of Engineers up in outside up in the Smoky Mountains. And later on that summer, one of the butterflies they tagged was found in Mexico. That's crazy. Okay, so these butterflies migrate from the Tennessee all the way to Mexico, and there's a reserve in Mexico National Park where you can go in and there are millions of butterflies. If you kill one, you get fined. And they put little tags on them that they collected once they die there and go down there and breed. So migration is very common in the animal kingdom. And so they're able to know distance, and they have a magnetic compass in their ear and their head that allows them to know which direction to go. Cognitive learning through observation, imitation, and insightful learning, solve problems without prior experience. Animals are pretty to draw upon prior experience with circumstances. One of the coolest ones was the chimpanzees could stack boxes to get a banana. Here's one where ravens learn to put the meat on a piece of string, the hook. They learn to stand on the top and pull the string up and then grab the meat. So that is a sign of learning. Okay. Now here's the way we communicate with each other and talk about nature, science, reading, languages, and so forth. We're not sure about language and all, but we will see that. And I think there was a cool comment in there about is the dog happy to see its owner, and do they have emotion? Y'all should read that. It's pretty cool. I read it last night. It does look like there's some data suggesting that animals have emotion. And if you've ever had a dog and you've been gone for a while and it sees you and you've been gone for a week, they get really excited, right? They run and go crazy. Okay, so there is some doubt. How much they have, we don't know. Does the mother feel love for her calf? There was a video before, that they've done away with all the SeaWorld. They're not doing the sea lions anymore. But there's a video in one of the movies that was trying to stop it where they separated a mother from her calf, and you could hear her screaming. I mean, she was making an underground sound that was like trying to retrieve her child. And that seems like, and so they were because of that and others, that's now been the SeaWorld give them all, turn them all loose, or try to get them, or they're not breeding them anymore. Some animals are solitary, others like to live in a group, right? Society is seen in the animals, and that's pretty cool. So, that's where members of species are organized in a cooperative manner, extending beyond sexual and parental behavior to a group, and that's what we have here. We're society. And I think communication is pretty cool, right? There are 4 ways animals can communicate other than language, right, that we have. Of course, one of them is chemical communication. We've already talked about that. Pheromones are absolutely real out there in the animal kingdom. So super important. That's why the dogs mark their territory, right? That's how they know if they're getting in deer, gets in somebody else's territory. So chemical communication is obvious. Auditory communication through sound is amazing, right? And I'm not saying they have language, but loudness, patterns, repetitive. I mean, it's very clear in the animal kingdom that if you do not say that you cannot learn to write bird song, you do not mate. Lady that used to teach this class was one of my best friends, Miss Miller, was a spider expert, and she was the first one to ever video some insects having sex, and they had a sound that they made with their hands. I mean, they make a sound on the tapping the ground is a sound to tell the female and the male to come together. So they're communicating to each other. It's just very clear that they have some auditory communication. Here is the monkey making a certain noise that tells them whatever alarm call. Okay. And then, of course, visual communication. I mean, come on now. Come on. Everybody in here has had that look your mother could give you, right? She ain't got to say no words. Like, they know that look that you're in trouble or whatever, right? So we know that's animal kingdom. I think one of the coolest ones, I have not done this yet, but the fireflies use a flash pattern to signal females of the same species. Okay, now did they put a picture of that? Yeah. So, and only in the Smoky Mountains, right outside Gatlinburg, only in April and May, they actually synchronize in the woods at night. So they blink and they synchronize blink. Thousands of them. And it's the boys, some of the girls, asking them out on a date. I'll try to make it PG-13. They're asking them out on a date. But nowhere do we see them actually synchronize. Like, usually it'd be like, I flash, you flash. But I'm talking about thousands flash, and then another over here, another part of the woods flash. And if you go, you have to get tickets, and you go the right time. If you can actually go to the website, it's probably been so cold, it didn't happen yet. But I wanted to go over there the year my daughter was working that summer, and I didn't. But it's about a 2-week period. You go over there and get tickets online, and you'll see hundreds of people parking, and you walk out and folded chairs and sit in the woods from 3 to 4 in the morning. Like from 1 to 5 in the morning, and to see this event. And it's the only place on earth that we've ever seen them actually synchronized like that. So it's pretty freaking cool, but they're communicating. The males flash patterns of different species to try to find the right female for them to mate. Pretty cool. So we have visual, okay, and then tactile occurs when information is passed from one another by touching. The gold chicks beats popping on mother, another one. And a foraging honeybee will use a tactical communication called the waggle dance, where they will come back into the hive, and by the dance, the way they do the dance, and the time it takes them to do the dance tells them how long to fly and the direction to go find food. So they do this little figure-8 dance, and when he does a little walk, that's the angle from the sun. You go out, find the sun, go at that angle, and you'll find the food. Now, how somebody figured that out, they should have won a Nobel Prize for that, right? So some scientists, was able to decipher the waggle dance, which is super cool. Okay, so there's 4 of those, right? So we had tactile, visual, then we had auditory sound, and then we had pheromones, chemical, right? A little listing there on the list, I think. Pretty cool. Okay, now the rest of this, I didn't go cray on y'all, because we got about 4 minutes. I didn't know anything. I think that's pretty much all the questions, except we got a few here. But behavioral ecology, once again, study of how naturally shapes behavior. Fitness is how well you are, not what kind of shape you're in, but how well you are to have likely offspring to survive. So in ecology, when you see the word fitness, it's talking about fitness of your species. Okay. Territorialism, we know that. Animals mark their territory. We can skip all of that. They make a big deal about that. There's an optimal foraging model where they eat a certain way, and foraging is very scientifically done so that they won't destroy the ecosystem, right? Not going to get all ugly about this, but some animals are made for life, right? Polygamous means they only have one mate. Others, just FYI, if you read the chapter, there's one species of chimpanzees where the woman intentionally breeds with like 10 or 15 males so that the male don't know which if it's their kid or not. So everybody in the community helps raise that kid. And we don't do that in humans, right? That would cause all kinds of problems on Jerry Springer too. We'd have Jerry Springer 24/7, right? Okay, just joking. But I'm just saying, but it's not, everybody's not monogamous, okay? Monogamous sends one male, one female, but others have different plans to that, okay? And I think that's what it's talking about. Okay, there is sexual selection in the animal kingdom. We all know that. The deer with the big horns. Most of them have a dominant hierarchy with 1 or 2 males breed most of the females in like a deer herd or a cattle herd or whatever. And he's usually the most fit, good looking one, right? The elk in the Rocky Mountain National Park in about November are going to be fighting, right? Banging heads. Y'all see the rounds hitting each other, right? That's all about sexual selection, right? The female is going to select the male that is the dominant physical male of that group. And then the coloration of the peacocks is also another one that's for that. So we see a lot of that. This is showing some of that. I'm not going to worry about who they are. Bam, I love that during mating season. The elk bulls, males find it necessary to engage in antler wrestling in order to have sole access to the females in a territory. Okay, and so that means the survival, the healthiest get the girl. Altruism, this is a good one here. A good way to kind of wrap up. Altruism is any behavior that has the potential to increase the likelihood of your reproductive success, and it benefits other members of another species or other members that are not kin to you. Okay, now I try to put that in terms of we can understand. So how about first responders working during COVID? They're putting themselves at risk, right? But their job is to what? To be a nurse and to help people, right? Or how about a firefighter going into a dorm on fire and pulling y'all out of the dorm? That would be an altruistic behavior. They're putting themselves at risk, right? They can die, therefore not our children, but to help you. Inclusive fitness is when you do that and it's somebody kin to you. So let's just say the dorm's on fire, okay? And I love every one of y'all. I like y'all. I've enjoyed y'all this year. But since Catherine was in my class before I knew her, and let's just say she's my 3rd cousin, 4th cousin, she's sort of kin to me. So if she were to die in a fire, I would have to look weirdly at her great aunt, her aunt or something, right? So I come in there with every intention of saving all y'all, but I'm gonna book out now first with every intent to come back in, but I don't get on. So I used to do that, and this is my rule. I will not pull over and help anybody on the road, tell my children, never help anybody having car trouble. But me and Mr. Donahue would drive the soda lot and teach at night back in the day. So if I saw an over sticker, we'd pull over and help. Because there's a pretty good chance I had them, or they knew who I am, or whatever. I never forget one time we were driving up there, and there's this car on the side of the road, and they were not off the road really well. I was scared. I saw an over sticker. I came up to the window, looked over, cracked the window, and she's like, "Don't kill me." I'm like, "We're not going to kill you. Pull off the road. I have my Northwest ID. I'm Mr. Robison. Where are you going?" So we're going to the soda. I said, "We are too." I said, "I'm going up there to teach." I said, "Pull off the road. And do you want to ride me and Mr. Donahue?" They were scared to get a call with us, which I'm glad they were, because that was what I would tell my daughter. I said, "Well, give me your name, and I'll go tell your teacher you're on your way," or whatever. But get off the road, and here's my number, here's my call. Call somebody, call your mom and dad. You know, back then everybody didn't have cell phones back that time. But that's kind of my altruism. I'll pull over if it's Northwest sticker. If it ain't, I drive on by. You know, I'm sorry. You know, unless it's like, I guess, you know, if it's a child or somebody on fire, I try to help. So anyway, reciprocal altruism occurs in groups of animals that are mutually dependent on each other and they help each other out, but they're not genetically linked. And we talk about the queen ants and blah, blah, blah. These guys do that. So anyway, but altruism is kind of a cool term, right? And we see it in animal kingdom. Hey, we got through that on time. Okay, guys, I enjoyed y'all this morning. Hope y'all enjoyed. It's a pretty cool little chapter, right? Y'all have a good one. We'll do, I'll put the others on video. We'll do them. We got 44. That's probably going to take a couple of days. So I'll do that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Y'all have a good day. Have a good one. See y'all, everybody. Have a good day. Be careful. It's like, I mean, still be, wear those masks. We're having a little COVID outbreak, I believe.